in what remains to me, to the allegations made about my theology. Well, the archaeologists of the State of Israel, after the 1967 war, when Israel became, for many years, the possessor of the Sinai Peninsula, it's now given it back, and of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, the biblical territories, had an unprecedented opportunity to show that the Bible story was archaeologically provable. And they were told by the founding leader of the State of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, go out, dig, find, he said, dig up the title deeds of our state. They had the strongest motive and the greatest opportunity any archaeologists have ever had. And the standard of Israeli archaeology is already extremely high, as you can tell from their national museums and the work of many great archaeologists such as Professor Finkelstein. And they had many years to do it. They couldn't find a single trace of anything that was remotely compatible with the story of the Exodus, the wandering, and the conquest of Canaan. Not one trace. On the other hand, what they could find, with the help of Egyptian archives, was enormous evidence in the opposite direction. Digging Up History is the book. It's very easy to get, very easy to read. It's a very impressive demonstration of what I call, and this is what to look for when you're looking for intellectual honesty in life, evidence against interest. In other words, people will say, I really wished, I really hoped I could find this. This was my ambition. Here is how. It wasn't compatible, wasn't doable in the light of the facts. I regard that as a very impressive piece of objective work on the part of Israeli scholarship. If you think that Jesus isn't a historical figure, it really only matters to you. What do I mean by that? For me, the most important thinker is Socrates, and the most important source of morality and philosophical comfort, by far. There's no evidence that Socrates existed either. It's not conclusive. That's to say, we only have, as we have in the case of Jesus, second-hand eyewitness reports of him. They're pretty persuasive, but they're not conclusive. He never wrote anything down, neither did Jesus. The stories about him are much more compatible than the ones of Jesus. The four Gospels contradict each other about everything from his birth, the circumstances of it, the flight into Egypt, very crucially, in all four cases, on the crucifixion and the resurrection. All of just read them for yourselves. I'm sure you must have read them by now. The discrepancies are extraordinary. They don't amount to a historical figure in the same way as we know from coinage, from building, from parchments, not parchments, but from documents, tablets, other things, that Alexander the Great, for example, was a historical figure. But to me, if Socrates didn't exist, it wouldn't matter. Because we have his method, we have his teaching, and he teaches us what, I loop back now to Dr. Dembski's first element of his critique, to having to know that to be educated is to understand how little you know and how little you understand. Dr. Dembski seems to think he's laid some kind of gigantic egg that's about to hatch a huge squawking chicken, when he points out that among evolutionists and among physicists and others, there are huge differences and disagreements. That's true. It's also going to get much, much more intense. If you want to see a really strong argument take place, go and talk to Richard Dawkins and ask him about his view of Stephen Jay Gould's, another great paleontologist, arguments on punctuated evolution. There are tremendous differences within our school. There's a huge amount yet to be known or explained. But we don't take anything on faith. There's no dogma. There are no tablets. We go where the evidence leads us. And, for example, when the last outbreak of flu virus occurred, because we know something about the genetic things we have in common with bacteria and viruses, and we were able to sequence the DNA of the last such virus in 1919, didn't take us very long to get a vaccine that could prevent the last flu from being as bad as the previous one. It works. It works. You can make sound medical predictions based on it. Medicine's impossible without the work of evolution and genetics. And you should be grateful for it. But it doesn't mean there's no God. It just means that we have what we think are better explanations for our human nature. I think that runs me out perfectly.
It does.
And again, thank you for your attention.